Hey everybody, I hope you are doing well and welcome back to Whiskey Wanders. In this visit, I have a chance to show you some of the Costco's that are in Southern California that you might never actually get to, and also prove to some of you all out there that not all Costco's are built the same, especially when it comes to whiskey selections or even whiskey types. So today I am out in a Costco that is in the far reaches of Southern California in a city called El Centro next to the US and Mexico border. And we're going to look at the price of some of the most well-known whiskeys that are for sale there. So things like the Gentleman Jack, as well as Maker's Mark, and one interesting whiskey that I think was designed for maybe the Japanese market, but found its way out to the desert for whatever reason. That is the Chivas Regal Mizunara. I can never pronounce that. I've not seen it anywhere else, so it's really interesting that it's just at this one single Costco. So I think this one should be pretty good. Now, before we get to it though, if you like these little videos of me whiskey shopping at Costco, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get updates when my newest videos get put up. So thanks again. Let's get down to it. All right, so let's start off with one of the most well-known brands of whiskey, probably in the world, which is Jack Daniels. In this case, it's the Gentleman Jack, which is supposed to be the upscale version of the traditional old number 7. So basically, the Gentleman Jack is that person that your wife wants you to be when you and and her, for that matter, know that really deep down, you're always going to be old number 7. Now, Gentleman Jack has a mash bill of 80% corn, 8% rye, and 12% malted barley. And it is essentially exactly the same whiskey as normal Jack Daniels, but gets put through a second charcoal mellowing process to make it silky smooth. So maybe more properly, Gentleman Jack is the version of you that gets introduced to your wife's friends at a wedding, rather than that guy who was out back drunkenly spraying the dog with the hose if the friends stop by unannounced. Now, the Costco Gentleman Jack is at 1.75 liters here, and it's at a very reasonable price for the quantity at $36.99. The high and the low shelf street price for the Gentleman Jack is at $62.49 on the high side, and on the low side it's at $49.99. So, it's a pretty big discrepancy. And that puts the average street price for the Gentleman Jack at $56.24. So, if you do end up buying it at Costco, you get a savings of $19.25 or 34.23%. The ABV on it is still pretty underpowered at 40% ABV, but that means it's good for mixing in cocktails or sipping with a soda or just kind of drinking with something else as opposed to just drinking it straight. Now, the tasting notes on it mention things like underbaked bread, grain husks, charred oak, and youthful mistakes. Just kidding on the last one. Maybe sort of. Now, the reviews have been very friendly to the Gentleman Jack, though, and give it an average score of 84.25 points, but also mentions that it is underdeveloped, thin, kind of bland, and completely forgettable. So maybe the score is maybe more about the nostalgia that people have for Jack Daniels rather than the actual taste. And realistically, I know that it's really hard for me to decipher the two. Is this the nostalgia flavor or the actual flavor that's coming in? And, basically, I would imagine everyone has their own Jack Daniels story, right? But either way, so in conclusion, this one's going to be a skip for me because, even right now, currently I have a 1.75 liter of normal Jack in my whiskey cabinet, and it's been there for a month or two or maybe even 3, and it'll probably outlive all the other bottles in my collection, and at this rate, maybe even me. Now, the next whiskey I'm going to talk about doesn't need much of an introduction. It's been the golden child of bourbons and whiskeys for the last 10 to 15 years in the whiskey industry, which is Maker's Mark, in this case, the 1.75 liter bottle. It's distilled by Beam Sundry, so that's the same people who make Jim Beam, and has a mash bill of 70% corn, 16% wheat, and 14% malted barley. In current times, Maker's Mark is just slightly less ubiquitous than Jack Daniels, and like Jack, everybody has at least some familiarity with Maker's Mark. Now, interestingly enough, though, actually looking at the info on it, they store in a warehouse and they make batches of 19 barrels at a single time, but they rotate those barrels from the top to the bottom of the warehouse throughout the year, so they get like an equal aging process on all of them for consistency, which, considering how many bottles they probably have, that's definitely a full-time job for a whole team of people. Now, the 1.75 liter bottle at Costco, the price is just a few bucks more than the Gentleman Jack at $39.99, which does kind of make me wonder if Jack Daniels made the Gentleman Jack to compete directly with Maker's Mark directly. I don't know which one came first. But the high and the low street shelf price for the Maker's Mark 1.75 liter is $59.99 on the high side and $37.99 on the low side. So that puts the street shelf price average at $48.99. So if you do pick up the Maker's Mark at Costco, you'll save $9 in cash or 18.37%. Now, the ABV on the Maker's Mark is at 45%, so it is a pretty standard level of ABV. And the tasting notes on it mention things like vanilla, oak, toffee, toasted nuts, and thin but buttery mouthfeel. The reviews on it are pretty decent as well at 85.25 points on average. It mentioned, though, that it is light on depth, and the price, for whatever reasons, is starting to make Maker's Mark more expensive, and the price is creeping up to the point that's beginning to overtake the taste of it. So for me, I guess in conclusion, it's another one that I'm going to pass. This is just another one that's so omnipresent that there isn't really a reason to own it. But if I am out somewhere and doing something and it's on the menu, I will usually drink it over the other standard cohort luxury bourbons that are out there if there's not anything more interesting. So that's what I put on that one. Now, the last whiskey I'm going to talk about today is the Chivas Regal Mizunara, which seems to be a new take on a whiskey that is well known and is at least in every public available bar. But that being said, I like the new twist that they are doing to change the flavor a bit by utilizing the Mizunara barrels. Now, Mizunara is a unique wood that only grows in Japan. It is very porous, that allows for a more full embrace of the wood elements by the whiskey, like a full embrace, a full hug, a wood hug for the whiskey. Of course, that is according to the Mizunara Makers of the World website. But it is used by some of the more luxury whiskeys, especially from Japan, like Yamazaki, Hibiki, and Hukushu, to make some of their most prized whiskeys. But like barrels in the United States and in Europe, they too in Japan are simply running out of barrels. I mean, even to use the wood from the Mizunara tree, it has to be at least 200 years old, which means that it's not really easy to adjust and to keep up with the current boom in whiskey. Also, interestingly enough, I have never seen this one in any of the Costco's I've been to so far, so I'm not sure if it's just me not seeing it or if it only comes out in this one Costco in El Centro. But the price here is set at $27.99. That's the Costco price, which is definitely a step up in price from the normal like Chivas Regal that runs between $15 and $17. The street shelf price for the high and the low for the Chivas Mizunara is at $54.99 on the high side and $42.99 on the low side, which puts the average street shelf price at $48.99. So if you do end up picking up at Costco, you'll be saving $21 in cash or 42.87%. Now, the ABV on it is still low at 40%, and I guess maybe low is not the right word for it. I guess maybe classic level is better, you can say that. And the tasting notes mention that it is light, Japanese style taste, has oak notes, grain, and toasted cereal, and fresh apricots. Apricots. The reviews on this one are also not great, though, with the average score at 76.33 points, which could be attributed to sort of the funky mixture of traditional Chivas tastes with the Mizunara. So, I mean, not all interesting mixtures are great. There's a food truck up the way here that does Thai and Mexican food fusion that, well, it's not bad, but it's definitely awkward. So I can see how that would be confusing. So in conclusion, I think I'm going to skip this one too. One, because I try to not drink whiskeys that are under 80 points, at least not drink them straight. And second, as I don't want to drive all the way back out to El Centro again if I don't have to. And lastly, Chivas as a whole has never really been my favorite. It's nothing against Chivas, it's just not my thing. All right, so that was it for today's Whiskey Wandering at Costco in El Centro. Thank you all so much again for watching to the very end. And I hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you get notified when my newest videos get put up. Also, don't forget, if you see a whiskey that you love, just buy it. Because if you don't, somebody else surely will, and it might even be me. Have a great rest of your day. I'm out, and adios.